Hello, and welcome to my latest deck profile for my latest Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. Today, I am going to be talking to you about my Gem-Knight deck. Yeah, this is a deck that I've been working on for a little while, actually even before this latest wave of new Gem-Knights came out. I was working on a deck about them. And then, of course, I had to postpone everything I was doing because I caught wind of these rather powerful new Gem-Knights that they didn't really change the total direction of the deck. There's a lot of what I was already doing still in here, but it definitely made things a lot more consistent and a lot better. So, anyway, yes, Gem-Knights. This is a deck that, like many of the decks I make, doesn't have a single avenue to victory, right? There's not just one thing that Gem-Knights want to do, necessarily. I guess you could, but that's not the way I play them. There are several things that this deck could be doing at any given time, and, it's up to you to know how to play the deck so that you know which thing you would best be doing in order to win the game. Now, I have designed this deck to go second, so keep that in mind as we're going through it, because Gem-Knights, even before these new cards, Gem-Knights could put an absurd amount of power on board in a very quick amount of time. So, I thought it really suited the deck to go second and to be sort of an OTK strategy, or many OTK strategies all rolled into one. So, with that little preamble out of the way, I am going to go through this deck. I am going to talk about every card in extreme detail, and then afterwards I will give some quick demonstrations on how you might want to play this deck. So, let's just dig right in. Every deck needs its starters, and this one actually has a couple to choose from. So we are going to start by talking about the Gem-Knight Nepyrim here, which is a level 4, a fairy, which is relevant. It is a light monster, which is relevant. 1550 attack, 1600 defense. So this card is loaded. It does a lot of stuff. It's like they designed it to be the perfect starter. So what it does, if you can read this tiny text, when it's normal or special summoned, you can add a Gem-Knight card from your deck to your hand, except another one of these, and then effect damage your opponent takes is halved, which is not relevant in this deck. During your main phase, though, immediately after this effect resolves, you can normal summon a gem monster, which is cool, another normal summon. And when this card is sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard and special summon this card. And you can only use all these effects once per turn. So yes, Gem-Knight Nepyrim, it special summons itself. It can search for something else, and it gives you an additional normal summon to fill your field with material. So it does a lot of stuff, and that is why we run this at 3 copies, because you're never sad to have this in your hand, and even if it's not in your hand, it is pretty easy to just ditch it to the graveyard in a number of ways, and then it special summons itself, and it just really gets the ball rolling. So yeah, Nepyrim is, I would say, a must at 3 copies. But, and this one is maybe less obvious of a starter, we have Diviner of the Herald, which I am also running at 3 copies. So what Diviner of the Herald does, it is a level 2, it's another light monster, it is a fairy, just like our Nepyrim, 500 attack, 300 defense, whatever, that doesn't matter. So, if this card is normal or special summoned, send a fairy monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, and then you increase this card's level by that monster's level. And, it does other things. If this card is tributed, you can special summon a level 2 or lower fairy from your hand or deck. I don't think I have any, so, it's really just there, because you can normal summon this, and immediately send one of these from your deck to the graveyard to special summon itself and then search for stuff and go on and on and on. So that is why we have the 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald, because they kind of act like copies 4, 5, and 6 of Gem-Knight Nepyrum. And they have other uses as well. Making this immediately turn into a level 6 tuner is useful, especially when going second, and I will talk about this in the gameplay section of this video a little bit later. Now, what would a Gem-Knight deck be without a handful of Gem-Knights? So that's what we've got here, starting out with some bangers. We got Gem-Knight Sapphire and Gem-Knight Tourmaline at 1 copy each. These are normal monsters. Both of them are level 4. Sapphire has 0 attack, 2100 defense. Tourmaline has 1600 attack, 1800 defense. They are here largely because they enable some other fun plays with other cards in the deck. And I must say, I am strongly of the belief that any deck can be improved by adding normal monsters. It is so much fun to try to find excuses to run these things. So yeah, I end up shoehorning them into a lot of my decks. But yeah, here we go, 1 copy of each of these. And one of the cards that they go with is this one right here, Gem-Knight Lazuli, which is a level 1 with 600 attack, 100 defense. It is a rock. If this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, then you can target a normal monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So if you use this as material for something, and you maybe also use one of your normal monsters, then you can use Lazuli to add that normal monster back to your hand, which then you can use as material for something else. Or maybe you could normal summon it if you really need to, or use it as discard fodder for whatever. So there are a few ways, and we will get to them later on in the deck. There are a few ways to use this card in conjunction with your normal monsters to just keep stuff in your hand so that you can keep the ball rolling. Now we also have some more serious Gem-Knights here. We have Gem-Knight Quartz at 2 copies. So this is a level 4, 1500 attack, 1500 defense. It's another fairy. What it does though, and this one's rather important. This is either the best card in the deck or the most useless. If your opponent controls a monster, then you can discard this card and set a fusion continuous spell directly from your deck. And then you are locked into, Gem-Knight monsters from your extra deck. Yeah, so keep that in mind before you use this Quartz. But it also does something else. If it's used as material for a fusion summon, and oh, you're gonna be fusion summoning, then you can, what do? You add a Gem-Knight monster from your graveyard to your hand, except one of these. So again, sort of like Lazuli, it returns stuff to your hand when it's used as material, but that first effect, that is the big one, and that is another reason why I designed this deck specifically to go second, because you really want your opponents to have something in play so that you can use Quartz to its fullest ability and just cheat stuff into play from your deck. But yeah, that's why we've got 2 copies of this. And then we have the Gem-Knight Holocore, which is a big ol' level 7, I believe. Yeah, it is a Dark Fiend with 1950 attack and 2450 defense. Some weird numbers there. We got 2 copies of this, though, just like the Quartz, because sometimes you want them in your deck, sometimes you want them in your hand, and yeah, if you only have the 1 copy, that's risky. But yeah, 2 copies works, and what this does is you can send a Gem-Knight normal monster, once again the normal monsters, or a Gem-Knight fusion from your deck to the graveyard. Note that is Gem-Knight Fusion, the spell card, not a Gem-Knight Fusion monster. And then you special summon this card from your hand in defense position. And when your opponent activates a card or effect, and you control a Gem-Knight Fusion monster, I'm just now realizing how confusing this paragraph is to read aloud. Then as a quick effect, you can banish 3 Gem-Knight cards from your graveyard, including this one, to negate that effect. and then all of your Gem-Knight monsters you currently control gain 1,000 attack, which is kind of neat. But yeah, what you want to do with the Hollow Core here, of course, is get it into play, use it as material so that it is in your graveyard, and then it protects your board from whatever your opponent is going to try to do to stop you. Or it can sit there until your opponent's turn and stop them from doing something. Either way, very, very useful card, and yeah, that's why we have the 2 copies. And as with any deck, we have this pile of hand traps that we need to disrupt the opponent on their first turn so that we even get our first turn. So we got 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring in this deck. What it does, like, these are all monsters, of course, but typically that is not relevant. They are used for their effects, so that is all I will explain to you. So, when a card or effect is activated... Hang on. When a card or effect is activated that includes any of these effects, then you can discard this card and negate that effect. So if your opponent tries to add a card from deck to hand, special summon from the deck, or send a card from the deck to the graveyard, you can discard your Ash Blossom and negate that effect. Very, very useful card, but we're only running 2 of them because we've got so many different hand traps in this deck, for a very good reason that we will see later. We also have a Drool and Lockbird, which is, it's kind of like another Ash Blossom, really. If a card is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand, except during the draw phase, then you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard, and for the rest of the turn, cards can't be added from either player's main deck to their hand. So this just shuts down anything that your opponent is trying to add to their hand for that entire turn. Very nasty effect. Effect Veiler is a much simpler one. During your opponent's main phase quick effect, send this card from your hand to the graveyard, target an effect monster, and negate its effects. An effect monster your opponent controls, that is. And negate its effects until the end of the turn. So this is just, simply put, it just negates an effect. Yeah, that's all there is to it. I don't think I need to explain that one too much. This here is a Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill, and it's very similar to Effect Veiler. When your opponent special summons a monster face up, then you can discard this card, target one of the monsters just special summoned, and negate its effects until the end of the turn. Also, if that face-up monster leaves the field, its controller takes damage equal to its original attack this turn. So, yeah, hey, that's something, but... yeah, it's mostly just there as another way to negate another effect. 1 copy. All of these, mostly, are 1 copy. Also, we have the Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. When a monster on the field activates its effect, or a spell or trap that's already face up on the field activates its effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard, I guess, to destroy that card on the field. So, unfortunately, the Ghost Ogre doesn't negate effects, but it does destroy the thing that activated its effect. And it can hit spells and traps, which is kind of neat. So it's a bit better, a bit worse, a bit of both at the same time, but I think it's still worth running this 1 copy of, again, because of another card later on. And then there's Nibiru, the Primal Being, which is a great card if you're going second anyway, so it's worth running regardless. But what this card does is, well, I'll tell you in a moment here. During the main phase, if your opponent normal or special summoned 5 or more monsters this turn, quick effect, tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible, special summon this card from your hand, and special summon a Primal Being token to your opponent's side of the field, whose attack and defense are the combined attack and defense of all tributed monsters. So, long story short, if your opponent is playing a lot of stuff, you can just wipe the entire field, play this to your side of the field, and your opponent gets a token that is maybe kind of big, but it doesn't have any abilities, and that means it is much, much easier to deal with. So, yeah, Nibiru the Primal Being is another rather nasty effect. Just the 1 copy, though. Again, we will see why in a moment. Okay, now let's get into the spell cards, starting with the classic Gem-Knight Fusion. So I will read what this does and then talk about it a bit after that. So you fusion summon a Gem-Knight Fusion monster from your extra deck using materials from your hand or side of the field, so it's basic polymerization stuff. However, if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish a Gem-Knight monster from your graveyard to return this to your hand. So that means this can be recycled, and it also means that if you use Gem-Knight Hollow Core to add this to your graveyard from your deck in order to special summon the Hollow Core, then you can bring this back to your hand pretty easily later, and then you can start fusion summoning, or maybe you just need a Gem-Knight card in your hand for some reason. So it's a versatile little spell. Often you aren't actually using it as a polymerization. It's actually useful just to sit in your graveyard. But in any event, whatever you're using it for, it is a rather potent ability. But again, it's very, very easy to just send to the graveyard, and therefore I only use the one copy. I think that's all you really need. Gem-Knight Dispersion, on the other hand, is a card that I run 3 copies of. And it's an interesting one. Once again, it's pretty loaded. It in fact has 2 abilities. And you activate one of these effects, but you can only use each effect once per turn. So if you have 2 dispersions, then you can use both effects, I guess, on the same turn. But what it does is, if it would focus, you fusion summon a Gem-Knight Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field. Okay, that's nothing new. But up to 2 monsters from your deck or extra deck can be used if they are non-rock Gem-Knight monsters and you have Gem-Knight Fusion in your graveyard. So that is why sometimes it's best, it's actually often best, just to leave Gem-Knight Fusion in your graveyard right where you put it, because then you can do some real cool stuff with Gem-Knight Dispersion. And its other effect, which is, again, rather useful, is you just add a gem monster from your deck or banishment to your hand. And then it halves any effect damage your opponent takes this turn, which, again, in this deck is not relevant. I'm not building the weird Gem-Knight burn version of the deck. But yeah, Gem-Knight Dispersion, very useful card. Even if you have 2 of them in your hand, you don't really mind that. So 3 copies is perfect. Now, onto the other very powerful cards. We have Brilliant Fusion. So this is a continuous spell. So this is one of the things that you're going to be searching for with Gem-Knight Quartz. So what it does is, again, please focus, thank you. When this card is activated, you fusion summon a Gem-Knight Fusion from the extra deck using monsters from your deck as material, but you change its attack and defense to 0. And when this leaves the field, you destroy that monster, but you can also discard a spell card, and then that monster you special summoned gains its original attack and defense back. So I guess you could bring Gem-Knight Fusion back from the graveyard, where you've probably already put it, and then you can discard it to this, and then your fusion monster regains its normal stats. But as you will see in the gameplay section of this video, this monster's stats don't typically matter that much. What matters more is that you're using materials from the deck just to load your graveyard with good stuff and get a useful monster in play who's there more for its effect than anything else. So yeah, Brilliant Fusion is a brilliant card. 1 copy though, because I believe it's actually limited to 1 copy, and 1 copy is really all you need, because you can search it so easily, provided your opponent is, playing the game and you can use Quartz's effect. And Scatter Fusion here is, it's kind of a backup Brilliant Fusion. If you have Brilliant Fusion in your hand, then you can still use Quartz to get Scatter Fusion, or vice versa. So during your main phase, if your opponent controls a monster, you can fusion summon a non-rock Gem-Knight from your extra deck using monsters from your deck as materials, and then you can't special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Gem-Knight monsters. only use this effect once per turn. When this card leaves the field, destroy, whatever it played. So, very similar to Brilliant Fusion, a little bit more limiting. So, typically you want the Brilliant Fusion more than you want the Scatter Fusion, but Scatter Fusion is still a very viable card, and again, if something happens to Brilliant Fusion, or if you just want to play both of them, I mean, that's pretty devastating, then it's still a good idea to have Scatter Fusion around as well. So we've got one copy of this. And that's gonna bring us to the removal section of this deck, and yeah, there's quite a bit of removal, given that this deck wants to go second. And we are gonna start with Ultimate Slayer, which I will say is one of the cards that actually inspired me to build this deck, believe it or not. So what this card does, it's kinda cool actually. Your opponents can't activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. You send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, then target a monster your opponent controls with the same card type, Fusion, Synchro, Excise, Pendulum, or Link, and then you shuffle that card into the deck. So this is a good way to get rid of anything troublesome your opponent has, and I guess I'll talk about it a bit later when I get around to the extra deck. Why this is kind of cool specifically in a Gem-Knight deck. I only use 2 copies of this though. I don't think 3 is particularly necessary. 2 is usually just fine. If you have it, then it's good, but you really don't want to be sitting on too many of these. But yes, the 2 copies of Ultimate Slayer. And then we have Harpy's Feather Duster, another classic bit of removal, destroy your opponent's spells and traps. Simple as that, really. A very good card. I usually don't like to see an opponent set 5 cards and pass turn. That is scary. So you've got Harpy's Feather Duster for just such occasions. We also have Lightning Storm, which I run at 2 copies. 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster, in case you aren't paying attention. But 2 copies of Lightning Storm, because this one also has very good going second abilities. If you control no face-up cards, then you can either destroy all of your opponent's attack position monsters, or destroy all of their spells and traps, which is usually the mode that I choose, because monsters are kinda easier for this deck to deal with. But yeah, we've got 2 of these. Again, powerful stuff. Called by the Grave. 1 copy of this because it is limited to 1. You target a monster in your opponent's graveyard, you banish it, and then until the end of your next turn, its effects are negated, as well as the effects of monsters on the field with that same original name. So usually you use this to stop hand traps, your opponent discards the hand trap to negate one of your effects, and then you use this to deal with that hand trap, and then you play your turn as normal. But it has other uses too. If your opponent is playing a very graveyard-centric deck, you can do some kind of nasty tricks with this card. So, very powerful, 1 copy. And then the Cross-Out Designator. This is a complicated one. You declare a card name, you banish 1 of that card from your main deck, and then negate its effects as well as the activated effects and effects on the field of cards with that same original name. So this is why I have all of those different hand traps in the monster section of this deck profile. Because if my opponent uses any of them, I can use Cross-Out Designator to negate those effects, because I have those cards as well in my deck. It's a neat little trick, and something that I like doing in a lot of my decks, just to make sure my effects go off uninhibited. Cross-Out Designator might be limited as well. I find I've always only used 1 copy of it anyway. I find 1 copy is just fine. So yeah, there you go. Cross-Out Designator. Triple Tactics Talent, again, another 1 of. I guess I like my 1 of removal cards. Well, this one's not really removal so much. If your opponent has activated a monster effect during your main phase, so maybe you got hand-trapped, then you can either draw 2 cards, take control of an opponent's monster till the end phase, or look at your opponent's hand, choose 1 card from it, and shuffle it into the deck. All 3 of those effects are very good. All 3 of them are kind of game-changing, so it just depends on what the game looks like when you use this card. I guess Triple Tactics Thrust kinda goes with this one, because if your opponent has activated a monster effect during this turn, then you can set a normal spell or trap directly from your deck. But if your opponent controls a monster, then you can add that card to your hand instead. And if you set a card by this effect, then you can't activate it. But you're going second, so if your opponent has anything in play, then you can add that card to your hand instead, and oh, there are a lot of good normal spells, as you've just seen in this deck. Either your Gem-Knight Dispersions, or whatever Lightning Storm you might need, or Triple Tactics Talent. All very viable targets, which is why I've got 2 copies of Triple Tactics Thrust, because it's kind of just a catch-all for any situation you might find yourself in. And to finish off the main deck, here's a rundown on the few traps that I use. Angel Statue Azaroon. This is an interesting one, a continuous trap. And what it does is it special summons itself as an effect monster, and maybe you could read this card's effect. There you go. It special summons itself as an effect monster with 1800 attack, 1800 defense, and when your opponent would special summon a monster while this card is a monster, then you can send this card to the graveyard, well, any continuous trap that is a monster, so just this one. And then you negate that summon and destroy that monster. And if this card in the monster zone is destroyed by battle, you can destroy the monster that destroyed this card. So this is just kind of a all-around pain for your opponent to deal with, and it goes with another card that we will see later in the extra deck. So that's why I have this, only the 1 copy, and again, you will see why later. And of course, what is a deck without infinite impermanence at 3 copies? Because this card is just really, really good. You target a face-up monster your opponent controls and negate its effects. And if this card was set before activation, then for the rest of this turn, all other spells and traps in this card's column are negated. But if you control no cards, because you're going second perhaps, then you can activate this from your hand. And that is why it is such a darn powerful effect, because your opponent is doing stuff and you don't want them to do stuff, so you can use one of these to maybe slow them down a little bit, or stop their turn entirely. That would be ideal. So yep, 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. I never leave home without them. And that brings us to the extra deck, and I'm gonna start with my extra deck Gem-Knights. I have 1 copy of every card in my extra deck. I don't have any duplicates, so I'm not going to be commenting on numbers, and we are going to start here with Gem-Knight Phantom Quartz, which is a Link 2 monster that needs 2 gem monsters. So what this card does is when it is Link summoned, then you can add a Gem-Knight card from your deck to your hand. Okay, that's pretty good, and you can also pay 1,000 life points to fusion summon a Gem-Knight from your extra deck by shuffling its materials from your graveyard or banishment into the deck, but it can't attack directly this turn. So, yeah, not being able to attack directly is a bit of a hoop that you have to jump through, but it is not insurmountable, and using the cards you've already used that are in your graveyard to play something real big is a very powerful effect. So yeah, the Phantom Quartz is very much worth running. You could even get away with running more than 1 of these if you want the game to go more than 1 turn, or if you expect that it might, but one has always been enough for me. Now, there's a whole bunch of Gem-Knight fusion monsters, as I'm sure you could guess. And, well, maybe we'll go through them rather quickly. Aquamarine is the first one here. It needs Gem-Knight Sapphire and another Gem-Knight monster. 1,400 attack, 2,600 defense is, like, it might survive, actually. But what this card does is, if it attacks, it's changed to defense position, okay. But when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, this is important, target 1 card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. Why would that be important, you might ask? Well, maybe you will see when I go over some gameplay. Gem-Knight Topaz is a Thunder Gem-Knight, 1800. It needs tourmaline as a material, but it can attack twice during each battle phase, and if it destroys a monster by battle, then you inflict damage to your opponent equal to the attack of that monster in the graveyard. This is a combo piece. This is part of what could be considered a win condition, and again, we will see why later. Gem-Knight Amethyst is similar to Aquamarine. It's a bit more of a defensive card with 2450 defense and 1950 attack. But when this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you return all set spells and traps on the field to the hand. So this is kind of a Harpy's Feather Duster sort of effect, if you can get it off and your opponent doesn't, stop you beforehand. This is a good way to just get rid of all of your annoying face-down cards that your opponent has. So yeah, that's a similar role to the Aquamarine, and again, you will see how and why later. Prismora. This is another Thunder. It just needs a Gem-Knight monster and a Thunder monster. But what it does is you can send a Gem-Knight card from your hand to the graveyard to target a face-up card on the field and destroy that target. 2450 attack, 1400 defense. This is a bit of a bigger one. It's got decent attack, actually. Or you can just use it to destroy something in play, which is rather easy to do. You know, right, that you can bring Gem-Knight Fusion back to your hand, so you should always have some sort of ammo for this guy to use. And we've got Gem-Knight Ruby, which has 2500 attack. Believe it or not, this is one of the finishers in the deck, because once per turn you can tribute a face-up gem monster, and this card gains attack equal to that tributed monster's attack. And then if this card attacks a defense position monster, it does piercing damage. So this thing can get massive. And yeah, we're gonna see how that can easily be accomplished, again, a bit later. Gem-Knight Lady Rose Diamond. This is a bit of a newer Gem-Knight, actually. 2700 attack. Again, it's rather large. Once during your opponent's turn, the first time a Gem-Knight monster would be destroyed by card effect, it is not. Okay. And during your turn, when your opponent activates a monster effect, then you can banish a Gem-Knight card from your graveyard, target a face-up card your opponent controls, and destroy it. So this is another defensive card. It protects you from your opponent's effects, sort of. It unfortunately doesn't negate anything, but still, it makes your opponent think twice about doing things, and maybe you can get rid of something annoying of theirs with it as well. Now, the final three fusion monsters in this deck, these are the big ones. Each of them is kind of a win condition in its own right. Again, I will go into further detail later, but just as a brief overview, the Gem-Knight Master Diamond here with 2900 attack, 2500 defense that needs 3 Gem-Knight monsters to play, this one's got an interesting effect that requires some setup. So it gains 100 attack for each gem monster in your graveyard, but once per turn, banish a level 7 or lower Gem-Knight Fusion from your graveyard, and then until the end phase of this turn, this card's name becomes that monster's name, and its effect becomes that monster's effect. So yeah, you can do some kinda interesting stuff with the Master Diamond, and we will see that demonstrated shortly. Gem-Knight Master Diamond Dispersion, though, this is one of the new Gem-Knights that I had to reorganize this deck to fit. And, oh, that's teeny tiny text, huh? Teeny tiny text, and maybe you can actually read. There you go. So, during the main phase, as a quick effect, you can send this card from the field to the graveyard, and you can special summon up to 3 non-rock gem monsters with different names from your extra deck or graveyard, ignoring their summoning conditions. Yeah, and for the rest of this turn, you can't special summon from the extra deck except fusion monsters. But when your Gem-Knight Fusion monster is destroyed by battle while this is in the graveyard, you can special summon this card again. So, being able to tribute this card and I've messed up the focus on this camera, being able to tribute this card to play 3 very powerful fusion monsters from your extra deck for free without worrying about conditions is, frankly, an absurd ability. But that is what this card does. And yeah, there's really easy ways to play this card, and yeah, we've seen a lot of this stuff already, and I'm sure you're piecing together how this deck works. But just in case you want to see it in action, we will in just a moment. And then finally, there's the Gem-Knight Lady Brilliant Diamond with 3,400 attack, 2,000 defense. Again, it needs 3 Gem-Knights to play. All of these big ones need 3. And what it does is, once per turn, you can send a face-up Gem-Knight monster you control to the graveyard, and if you do, you special summon a Gem-Knight fusion from your extra deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. Simple as that. Once again, this is just how you get something into play for free, really. I guess you do need to tribute another Gem-Knight, but it could be anything, and surely what you're playing with this is something a little bit more powerful. And it's got a kind of neat interaction with the Phantom Quartz, which, say it with me, we will talk about later. Now let's talk about the rest of the extra deck. So there is one other card in the extra deck that is actually used as an extra deck monster, and that is the Silhouette Rabbit. So what this card does is it needs 2 effect monsters to play, so it's pretty easy to play. And if it battles a monster, neither can be destroyed by that battle. It is an illusion after all. And you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If this card is link summoned, then you can set a continuous trap from your deck with an effect that special summons itself as a monster. So that is what the Angel Statue Azaroon is meant for. This card will search it right into play, and then you don't need to worry about it. Also, it does another thing too. If a card in the spell and trap zone is special summoned to the monster zone, then you can target a spell or trap your opponent controls and destroy it. So again, the Angel Statue does a lot of annoying things, and the Silhouette Rabbit puts it right into play, and it might even be useful as like a mystical Space Typhoon sort of effect to destroy one of your opponent's cards. So it's pretty loaded for something that's not terribly difficult to get into play. The reason I use this in this deck is that Gem-Knights, like a pure Gem-Knight deck like this, Gem-Knights don't do much if they're going first. They really can't put up too much of a defense. So Silhouette Rabbit is one of the few things that this deck can do if it goes first for whatever reason, because then at least you can hinder your opponent in some small way. And that is, well, yeah, that's this rabbit's job. And the rest of the cards in the extra deck, these are fodder for Ultimate Slayer. We have a fusion, an Excisee monster, and, oh, I guess they're not all fodder, and a synchro monster. But yeah, so one at a time here, let's go through these. We've got the Elder Entity Entis, which you're never going to play, but if it's sent to the graveyard, then you can target a monster on the field and destroy it. So Ultimate Slayer will deal with one card, this will deal with another. You can also use this with Diviner of the Herald if you just really need to destroy something fast, so that's cool. It is a fairy after all. The Mariologic Aggregator here, the Excisee monster, again, you're never going to actually play this, but somewhere in here it has an effect that if it's sent to the graveyard, target a face-up card on the field and negate its effects until the end of the turn. So yeah, there you go. That's, again, Ultimate Slayer, just a bit of extra value. And the Golden Cloud Beast Malong is the synchro target for Ultimate Slayer. If this card is sent to the graveyard, target a face-up card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So that just gets rid of, again, a second card your opponent has. It's kind of neat to have all these cards, all these different targets, so that you again, just get a bit of extra value out of your Ultimate Slayer. And as for a Link monster target, well, if you're going second, you probably don't need Silhouette Rabbit, so that can go to the graveyard, and you're not gonna miss it too much. And then finally, we have the Chaos Angel, which is another huge card, great for going second. Now, this is a level 10 Synchro, and, well, here's what it does, if I can get it to focus nice, yeah. So you can use a light or dark monster you control as a tuner for this card's Synchro Summon, but when it is special summoned, then you can target a card on the field and banish it. Alright, that's some good removal right there on a 3500 attack body, but depending on the attributes of the monsters used to play it, it gets these effects. Light, then your Synchro monsters are unaffected by monster effects activated by the opponent, and for Dark, then monsters you control can't be destroyed by battle. So, I don't think you can play this card with a Dark monster. Oh, actually, maybe you technically could, actually. I guess there is the Gem-Knight Hollow Core, and you've got your tuner hand traps. If you really wanted to, you could make this with a Dark monster. But typically, you are making this out of light monsters, because it is actually very simple to do. You play your Diviner of the Herald, you send your Gem-Knight Nepyrum to the graveyard, Diviner of the Herald becomes level 6. Gem-Knight Nepyrum special summons itself. 6 plus 4 is 10. You can go right into Chaos Angel from that, and yeah, I will demonstrate it very quickly in the gameplay section, but that is the long and short of it. It's a very easy way to get a very, very powerful card in play, and that's why we're using the Chaos Angel. Just be careful, because there are cards in the deck that will lock you out of playing this, so it's usually best to play this card sooner rather than later. And now just for some quick honorable mentions, because these are always fun. There are other Gem-Knight normal monsters, right? So if you don't like the ones that I've chosen and you want to use different ones, or you want to use more of them, then you've got like Garnet and Lapis. They go into different fusion monsters than the ones that I've selected. Yeah, that's why I don't use these ones. I don't think they're required for what I'm trying to do. Gem Armadillo is actually a decent card. When it's normal summoned, you just search up a Gem-Knight monster to your hand. It's good, but I don't think it's all that necessary for this deck. I just didn't have room for it. Maybe as a one-of, if you really want. Gem-Knight Obsidian is cool, because if it's sent from your hand to the graveyard, then you can target a level 4 or lower normal monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So again, it's great for getting added value out of your fusion summons, but it has to be sent from the hand, and that is a real shame. Of course, it's very possible to search for this thing, and in the earlier version of this deck I made heavier use of it, but right now you don't really need it. It's cool if you want to use it, but I don't think you need to. And Gem-Knight Alexandrite, yeah, this is another one that I like, but maybe it's not good. You tribute it and special summon a Gem-Knight normal monster from your deck. Well, it has 1800 attack, so most of the normal monsters are worse than it to begin with. Unless you want to play Gem-Knight Crystal, which is a big ol' level 7 normal monster with 2450 attack. Yeah, you can, I guess, just beat face with this thing if you really want to, but yeah, it's funny. It's really funny. It's not good. And then there's all these other fusion monsters that do various things that I found to be less useful in this version of the deck. Like, Citrine here stops your opponent from activating effects when you attack. Lapis Lazuli, this is the card that is used in the burn version of this deck, because it just burns your opponent for all the special summoned monsters in play. But again, this is not what I'm trying to do, so I'm not using it. There's Gem-Knight Seraphinite, which is not bad. It gives you an extra normal summon, but Nepyrum does that on its own, so you don't need to go into a fusion monster to do that anymore. Gem-Knight Zirconia is just another big old beater with 2900 attack, but I will say it's very easy to play. So maybe you just need an easy-to-play fusion monster, I don't know. Gem-Knight Pearl is an Excisy monster. I don't know why this card exists. Typically you want your Gem-Knights in the graveyard, so locking them behind an Excisy monster that can't get rid of its materials is maybe not the best plan, but it has 2600 attack. It's big for a rank 4, if you're, into that sort of thing. Absorb Fusion is another decent card. I don't mind Absorb Fusion. I used it before Dispersion came into being. You add a Gem-Knight card from your deck to your hand, and then you can Fusion Summon by banishing materials from your hand or field. So, just another search. The search effect is very good. You could get away with using Absorb Fusion. I just don't. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do now is just go over a very basic version of this deck's combo. Yeah, it's easier to explain this way, and typically, depending on what's in your hand, you should be able to do quite a bit more than this, but this is just about as bare bones of a combo as I can make it. So for the purposes of this combo, we are going to assume that we're starting off by normal summoning our Diviner of the Herald. And by doing that, we can send Gem-Knight Nepyrim to the graveyard, which will make Diviner's level equal to 2 plus 4, which is 6. There you go, there's your math. Now, Gem-Knight Nepyrim sent to the graveyard, you can discard anything to special summon it, which will allow you to then search for a Gem-Knight Holocore and add it to your hand. Now at this point, you gotta ask yourself a question. Do you have one other Gem-Knight in your hand that you can normal summon to Gem-Knight Nepyrim? If you do, then use Nepyrim's ability and normal summon that card. If you don't, well then things are a bit worse for you, but you can still make it work. So, assuming that you can, in fact, normal summon another Gem-Knight monster, then this is the time to do it. Because you have this level 6 and you have this level 4, which means you can use them both to immediately synchro summon out this Baronne de Fleur, this Chaos Angel. And then you can banish something at your opponents, and you've got this giant Chaos Angel that will just sort of stay in play forever. Now, if you didn't have another card to normal summon, unfortunately that means you can't go into Chaos Angel because you need another Gem-Knight in play. But hey, other than that, this kind of remains the same throughout the combo, so just keep that in mind. It's very possible to have a Chaos Angel in play right now. But moving forward, we know that we have Holocore in our hand, so we can special summon it by sending this Gem-Knight Fusion to the graveyard. And now that we have 2 Gem-Knight monsters in play, we can immediately use them to link summon out our Ghost Quartz here, Phantom Quartz, that's what it's called, which will allow us to search for another Gem-Knight card, like the Gem-Knight Dispersion. So this is what our field looks like. We can use Gem-Knight Dispersion because we have Gem-Knight Fusion in our graveyard, and we can use the Phantom Quartz and 2 other Gem-Knights, any other Gem-Knights in our deck or extra deck, it does not matter. And we can Fusion summon out the Master Diamond Dispersion, which we will then immediately use to fill the field with powerful Gem-Knight Fusion monsters that aren't rocks. And, well, as you can see here, we have more than enough power on board to OTK the opponent. So, this is, again, a very simplified version of this combo. Maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. But in any event, this is clearly enough power to win, so this is something to kind of keep an eye out for as you play. Now, let's consider another scenario. Suppose you have Gem-Knight Quartz in your opening hand, and your opponent has any monsters in play. or maybe you searched for Gem-Knight Quartz through a variety of means. In any event, you can use Gem-Knight Quartz, send it to the graveyard, to set your Brilliant Fusion directly from the deck, oops, getting away from me, which you can immediately activate to send some Gem-Knights to your graveyard to fusion summon out none other than the Master Diamond Dispersion. But what are you sending to the graveyard? That is the question, and this is where you can do some fun stuff. For example, maybe you're sending Gem-Knight Nepyrim to the graveyard. Well, that would allow you to special summon it from there and keep on doing other things. Or maybe you just want to send a Gem-Knight Lazuli and a normal monster to the graveyard, which would allow you to return that normal monster to the hand so that you can use Gem-Knight Nepyrim to normal summon it, which, again, is a rather viable thing to be doing. Or, if you don't want to do that, maybe you just want to send Gem-Knight Holocore to the graveyard so that it can protect any of your future plays from whatever your opponent is trying to do. And, of course, as we've already seen, Diamond Dispersion will go into enough power to simply OTK the opponent on its own, so you don't even need to worry about that. Yeah, Gem-Knight Quartz, Nepyrim is a rather loaded card, but Gem-Knight Quartz simply allows crazy things to happen, and all you need for that to work is A, to go second, and B, for your opponent to have a monster in play. So it's maybe not asking too much, but you can have a lot of fun with this card and with Brilliant Fusion. So feel free to experiment and see what sort of crazy boards you can build as a result. There are also other fun plays that you can make with Brilliant Fusion, or maybe with Scatter Fusion, depending. Plays that are a bit more defensive in nature. Plays that will disrupt your opponent that don't immediately go for the OTK. So, say you have your Brilliant Fusion that you got into play somehow, and you can use it to play Gem-Knight Aquamarine, or Gem-Knight Amethyst, or Gem-Knight Prismora, all of which have removal effects on them. So, let's, for sake of argument, say you played the Aquamarine. Now, it has 0 attack and 0 defense because of Brilliant Fusion, but its effect still works. And also, suppose you used Gem-Knight Lazuli and Gem-Knight Sapphire to play it. We've already seen that this will add Gem-Knight Sapphire back to your hand, which you can normal summon. Well, now you've got these 2 cards in play. These 2 Gem-Knights, that is. And you can immediately use them to link summon out the Phantom Quartz. And because Aquamarine was sent to the graveyard, its effect will trigger, allowing you to bounce something on your opponent's side of the field. So hey, that's kind of cool. But this also will, just on its own, allow you to go into one of the other sort of win conditions in this deck. So we're gonna talk about that real quick. So say you do nothing else, which is unlikely, but pretend you're doing nothing else. Well, then, with the Phantom Quartz's second ability, it's impossible you're doing nothing else. This literally has a search on it. But pretend you're not doing anything else. You can use this card's second ability to start fusion summoning. And, well, we have 3 Gem-Knights in our graveyard right now, so you can just use those to play the Gem-Knight Lady Brilliant Diamond, who unfortunately can't attack your opponent directly, which is, it's a bit of a shame. But you can use her effect to tribute your other Gem-Knight monster to play Gem-Knight Ruby directly from the extra deck. You don't even need to use Garnet. And, well, now you've got this thing with 2500 attack. The Brilliant Diamond can't attack directly, but you can tribute her to Ruby's effect to make Ruby have 2500 plus 3400, hang on, plus 3400 is 5900 attack, which is, it's not an OTK on its own. Alright, but that is a huge number that is going to do some serious damage. So that's kind of how Brilliant Diamond here and Phantom Quartz work together, because even though, the card that you play can't attack on its own, Ruby certainly can. So that's what you're going to be trying to do, and again, you are, I would say, almost 100% likely to have something else in play to finish them off as well. And finally, let's talk about the third big Gem-Knight, the Master Diamond. So, what do you do with this card, right? Well, and again, here is something that inspired me to build this deck. What if you used Ultimate Slayer to send Gem-Knight Topaz to the graveyard, and then you could use Master Diamond, banishing Gem-Knight Topaz to allow Master Diamond to attack twice. This is, well, just like that thing with Ruby, it's not technically an OTK on its own, but it is really cool that you can have a Gem-Knight which probably has over 3,000 attack, that can attack twice in a row for an obscene amount of damage. Now, have I ever done this? Yes and no. I have done this. I've never used Ultimate Slayer to enable it, but I have done this before, and let me tell you, it feels real good. And there you have it. That has been my 2025 Gem-Knight deck. So, what is my final verdict on this deck? It is actually really, really good. I would say this is one of the better decks that I have ever made, and coming off of just having worked on my Fish, Mermail, Atlantean deck, that is, again, saying something. I guess I'm on a bit of a roll with building decent decks for a change. It's certainly a more consistent and more powerful deck than it would have been without the newer Gem-Knight support, because I had prepared a whole speech regarding that deck, lamenting, really, how easily it could just fill the field with very powerful cards sometimes, but it was extremely inconsistent and heavily dependent on what was in your opening hand. But this one, this version of the deck doesn't suffer nearly as much because of all of the extremely powerful searching effects and special summoning effects that they have since added to the Gem-Knights. So you could play a deck exactly like this one, or very similar to it, and you probably wouldn't get laughed off of the game table. But yeah, that's just what I say. I really like this deck. I think it turned out rather well, and this will bring us to the end of today's video. And I do hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, then please leave a like, a comment, subscribe, and I do hope you'll join me again next time for whatever deck it is that I might be profiling next. Till then, ta-ta. Oh, yeah! That was worth waiting for. Oh my goodness gracious, the double secret rare box. I like it. Oh, and the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Oh my, oh my, oh my. That's a good one. Okay, here we go. This is the card I wanted. The rest of this, garbage. Don't need it.